Welcome to Inbox Zero. You can think of this podcast as the advice column for business leaders. I'm Bianca Lager, your host, and every week I take your questions about the people, processes, and the problems that are clogging up your inbox and driving you nuts. So let's get you to Inbox Zero. Hey there, I'm Bianca Lager. Welcome back to Inbox Zero. This is the podcast where we tackle real, messy, unfiltered questions about running a business. No fluff, no sugarcoating, just straight answers. So let's get into it. Today's question is a big one. It's raw, it's uncomfortable. And it's one I think a lot of you have thought about at least once, even if you've never really tried to say it out loud. When I read it, I certainly related myself. So here it is. All right. How do I know when it's time to give up? I started my business 3 years ago, and with the hope of more flexibility and greater income. I'm making enough money, enough to get by, but I'm not making more than I could probably earn from a W-2 job. It's a constant struggle, and I feel like I work all the time. Shouldn't I be more successful by now? Is it time to let go? So, first of all, tale as old as time, right? Let me just say, you're certainly not alone in this feeling and in feeling like this. It's one of the most scary, raw, sort of vulnerable positions that one can be in, and a question they can ask themselves. It's just when it feels like it's all on you, and actually it is. So, I mean, I think the fact that you're asking it alone shows you incredible self-awareness and really, I think, courage, right? It's you kind of confronting your own shortcomings, which I think is incredibly powerful in life, period. But especially as an entrepreneur, when you're really trying to do this, make it happen, and you don't have a whole lot of other people to depend on to help you get it done, and you're making up the rules as you go. It's really tough. So when I read this, I really spent some time thinking about it, just because in a couple different scenarios now, I've been in these shoes before, and I've really faced a ton of self-doubt around if I was doing the right thing, if hi, it's me, I'm the problem, it's me, or if it's actually something that I can do about it. So I've laid out a process. I made a little outline, and here's what I think you should do. So step number 1, you really have to sit down and do like an actual writing exercise to define success. You say, shouldn't I be more successful by now? So what is success? This is where to start. What does success look like for you? Because you might have an illusionary image, or you might have created some sort of kind of fantasy about what your life was going to turn into, or what it was going to look like. So what does success mean? That kind of vision of, shouldn't I be more successful? Does that mean making money? And if it does, how much more? If you're measuring yourself against someone else's version of success, or something that you think you've seen other people achieve, well, I mean, you're not going to win. This is you and your journey. When you started your journey, you said you wanted flexibility and more income. Now, have you gotten either one of those? And when you started, how much flexibility? Like, what were the measurements that went into that? So if it's not the case, if you are pretty clear on what those measurements are, then why? Is it the business model? Is it how you've been running things? Or is it that you've kind of outgrown this version of success that you were first chasing? Is that success measurement that you first thought of not really either achievable, or not really something that you even want anymore? So in just thinking about income alone, are you really comparing apples to apples, right? Yes, a W-2 job might pay more on paper, but there's so many trade-offs. You get a paycheck, but it also locks you into somebody else's schedule and rules and ceilings. And is that what you truly want? And what kind of value do you put on those things? What is that value to you in a sense of measurement, right? What are these tangible things that you can measure, and how can you sort of define what your success is in that, in achieving that? Or does it just seem kind of easier right now because the business is such a grind and so tough, and you kind of thought that like at this point maybe you'd be over that grinding tough part, which, like, spoiler alert, like, it never goes away. This is so cathartic for me. Like, thank you for writing this in. Okay, so step number 1, measure, remeasure, I suppose, your success. I'm sure you sat down and thought of these things, but you really need to kind of think about like that definition of success and what some of those measurements are, what they mean to you, how much value, how much weighted value. If you're kind of like, a data person like that, maybe make a calculation for yourself of what those weighted values are. Okay, number 2. So this is a harder one if you are that data person, but don't just look at the data, but look at your feelings. How do you feel about yourself? Emotions are very powerful. And when you are exhausted, depleted, overwhelmed, burnt out, and feeling like you're literally just spinning your wheels over and over again, it's really easy to think this isn't working. But apply logic to these emotions, right? And here's 3 questions that I wrote down that I think will be helpful in clarifying this. Number 1, are you consistently making sales or generating revenue? Okay. Do you have a clear understanding of your expenses and your profit margin? Is there a clear kind of business model working there? Are there specific trends in your business, like seasonal dips or like popular products or services that consistently perform better? So if you're not really clear on what these business measurements are, and there's different ways you can talk about them or think about them, there's different questions I can ask that would prompt you to be looking at the same thing. But this is really about, again, not just the data. I mean, gathering the data, but understanding what your feelings are about what's not working and what is. It's really easy to feel like nothing is working. So kind of sitting down and analyzing the data and looking at it through the lens of emotion might actually open your eyes to see like maybe this business isn't broken. Maybe it just needs a pivot. Maybe what these fundamental things are fine, but we might need to make some tweaks to know that, this whole thing isn't just a failure. It might feel that way, but that if you actually look at the data, kind of check your emotions and know that, that we might need some changes. Or the data does confirm your gut feeling that those things really aren't happening. It's a mess. This still really isn't like a clear business model, profit margins. There's not like a measurable way to say like we've had consistent, success here and there, and we've seen this work and this not, and here's where we can tweak. So if that's not there, then that data review, kind of again looking through the lens of how do I feel about these measurements, will kind of help you confirm, this gut feeling, it isn't just me kind of being scared and panicking. We have some serious questions to ask of whether this is going to continue to be viable for you, moving forward. So, the third thing that I would do is also like take a little bit more of a microscopic lens and be really honest about what's actually draining you. So to put it super bluntly, is it the business that's wearing you out, or is it the way you're running it? Are you just trying to do everything yourself? Are you like actually just stuck in survival mode because you haven't automated or outsourced some of the more repetitive tasks. You're not leveraging AI, you're not leveraging the right tools, or you are sort of going through, all of the things operationally that you need to do and trying to uphold it all because you're still trying to really control everything and you think you're going to do it best, or you're trying to cut costs, or um, what are the things that you're avoiding because they feel icky, you don't like it, you're not as good as it. We're all good at some things, we're not good at everything. The thing about being an entrepreneur is you're a C-suite of one, right? You're the CFO, you're the chief revenue officer, you're all of these things. So you're not going to be automatically good at all of them. So what are the tasks that you're avoiding because you just don't like them? Is there something that's blocking you from growing because you're just not doing the things that you could be doing? And these are the things that you could potentially outsource, or you could potentially find other ways of doing, but you're just kind of like blocked and drained, or that like the business model itself causes you to spend a lot of time in these draining areas because it's the nature of the business and you just don't like it that much. So sometimes it's not necessarily like the business and the profit margin, and actually, you're like, well, we are making money and like people buy this and it's okay. But so it's actually like the systems that you're working within, or the lack thereof of boundaries that you're putting up with yourself. And really the story that you're telling yourself about the way things have to be. It just has to be this way right now. It could very much be the opposite too, that you've experimented with a lot of these outsourcing things and they just didn't work or pan out right. And so, you've become really frustrated with how this really works. And again, you've kind of just decided that, you're stuck doing all this. So if you could imagine stripping away the parts of the business that make you absolutely miserable, would you still want to do it? Or is the business itself no longer lighting you up, no matter how you slice it up, no matter what you do to think about it, even if the things that you are naturally good at, the things that you like, just aren't really that fulfilling to you anymore? And let me tell you, it will be really clear to you if that's the case. When you're just done, you're just done. And I'm speaking as somebody who walked away from a situation that was pretty comfortable for my life in general. Like, it really did a decent amount of financially, and just sort of in a lot of ways was a decent place to be. And I felt miserable doing it. I really did. And it's really tough to be honest with yourself about that. Even the things that I enjoyed and liked doing, there wasn't enough of them, or it wasn't fulfilling enough that made it worth it anymore. Okay, so step 4, got to talk about opportunity costs. So here's the thing, and here's I'm sure what you've been kind of beating yourself up over is that, like, there is an opportunity cost for staying stuck and miserable. Every day they're staying in a business that's draining you is a day you're not building something that could actually fulfill you. Even if it is a W-2 career and job that could be fulfilling to you. This is your life. We only get one and it's short. So if you are continuing to slog through and push yourself through and you're just not getting out of it what you want, you're not spending, enough time with your family, pursuing other passions, growing, feeling like there's growth in your life, it's really something to think about in terms of how you could be spending your time on the other side. And I'm not saying necessarily, quit right now because you're drained and stuck and you only live once, YOLO, whatever. It's just like an honest, really look at not seeing the results that you want after 3 years. Something has to change, right? So you either need to recommit to the business with fresh strategies, clear boundaries, or decide to walk away, knowing that you gave it your all and that leaving isn't a failure, but it's growth. It's growth towards those opportunities that are waiting for you on the other side. And again, I think that it's important to think about what we talked about in the earlier steps in terms of what does success look like, because the grass can start to look really greener in those opportunity costs. And you can, and maybe even why you started this business is because the grass seemed greener, freedom, yada, yada. But now you realize you're not quite so free. So, what really realistically are you going to be giving up on each side? And what is the weight of that to you? Because that's only a calculation you can make. I wish somebody could make it for us, but it's not. It's a calculation only you can make, because you're certain you're surviving right now. You're making kind of enough money, but you're not like not accomplishing, and keeping up with your life. So there's not a clear like, hey, this isn't working in that way. And so it's really it's much harder when you're thinking about growth and how you spend your time and your emotions and your feelings of measuring those things and what value they are. It's a lot tougher. But just know that if that decision does come to, I think those opportunities are worth pursuing and it's time to move on from this. It's just a chapter. It doesn't mean anything in terms of, who you are as a person and whether you are worthy of success or not. It just means you got to do something else. It literally is all it means. Okay, so that all being said, thinking through those questions and kind of really doing some soul searching. And by the way, let me tell you, you got to get some headspace. You got to get some headspace to really find clarity. And I'm talking like several days of not thinking about this stuff at all. And I know it's almost impossible to kind of shut down your business for a week or something, but you really have to. You really have to just completely decompress from it. To try to see if you have some clarity to know whether or not, this is the right thing for you or not. And not to say that, like, even if you continue to go forward, it's going to feel like, yes, oh my God, the week was great and I'm so energized. It's just like, do you have more in you? Can you keep going? Do you still want to see it through? Thinking about all those opportunity costs, like, is it still worth it? But you really do need the headspace to kind of let you digest what this decision is. That being said, point number 5 here I'll make is you need to give yourself a deadline. If you're not ready to let go, fine, but you need to set a deadline to reevaluate. So for example, like 6 months, right? I will, measure this. You'll be specific about a certain revenue target or working a few hours or landing a client or whatever. And if you don't achieve those like extremely tangible things, you'll need to reassess. And even if you do, you need at least a check-in, really either way, with what your feelings are in those things. So it gives you a really clear window to either turn things around or make peace with moving on. And that's what it's all about. I think probably one of the healthiest lessons I ever learned from one of my business mentors was, it was a phrase he would repeat a lot. And he would say, I'm at peace with that. I can be at peace with that. And, over time, what I learned really what that means is that, like, I don't really like this decision. It's not the one I wanted or originally thought that the way it was going to go. But can I be at peace with it? Can I go, that kind of sucks, but we move on. It's really hard to do. And it's really important, I think, to anticipate what your future feelings are going to be. Can you be not happy, not joyful, not, oh my gosh, this feels so right, excited, but can I be at peace? Can I be calm? Can I live with myself? And can I say, tough break, kid, keep it going. And trust me, I think having a deadline will really help you focus on that piece and achieving that piece and knowing that, like, okay, if X, Y, and Z doesn't happen for whatever reason and whatever the excuses are, I will be at peace with saying it's time. And I think that's the best that you can do. And I think that, telling yourself, okay, I'm going to give it one last fight is totally fine too. but put some barriers for yourself around that, because you can do that indefinitely and keep burning, yourself down and spinning your wheels. So if you say, I'm going to give it one last go, define exactly what that one last go is. And know that that was your measurement to feel at peace on the other side. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I think review of takeaways. You don't need anyone's permission to keep going. You certainly don't need mine. And you don't need anyone's permission to walk away. And that's the really tough part, isn't it? You just want to go to somebody and be like, this sucks, right? Like, I should go. You have to feel like compelled. But it's just not like that. And you owe it to yourself, honestly, to be honest about what you want, what's not working, how you feel about, again, those kind of more difficult things to measure. Ending the business, giving up, and call it what it is. Giving up on the business. It doesn't mean it's necessarily a failure. Or you can even accept that, this was a failure, and that's okay. Take the F. Move on and pivot to something better. And let me tell you, you hear it all the time. It's really hard to swallow, but failure is a part of this journey, right? It's just a part of it. It's just like, well, that didn't work. And you got to keep going. And that's all there is to say about that, I think. So, thanks so much for writing in. Again, this is incredibly cathartic, and it really helped me sit down and organize my thoughts this time, which I think is helpful for us all. So I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who spends their time and kind of opens up writing in. So if this resonated with you, or if you're sitting there thinking, just shoot me a message. Let's talk about it. Until next time, stay brave, stay at peace with whatever those tough decisions are. And remember, you're not your business. You're so much more than that. You have a whole dynamic life, and this is just the way you make money. Just the way you make money. No big deal at all. Thanks so much again for joining Inbox Zero.